Okay, so in this video, we're going to be tackling another VJ loop. This one's with a triangle shape. Let's show you what it looks like. So this is what it looks like. We're going to be tackling this design. We're going to be doing the same animation, basically replicating this whole thing. Quick side note, if you make this render, tag me in it on Instagram. I'd love to see it, and I'll add you to the tutorial highlight, and you can see other people's renders. Okay, so first we need to model the triangle. So hit Shift A, over here, click Cylinder. Right up here on Vertices, bring it all the way down to 3. And then right here on cap fill type, make it nothing. All right, now let's hit RX90. So now we have this. I want to scale it up by 2. I'm going to hit S2. Next thing we need to do, I'm going to scale it down a little bit here on this scale on the Z. Now, because this will be a loop, we need to add our guide. So hit S8 on our guide. And then right here, we're going to go to the transform settings on viewport display, change display as to wire, and when you render it, it will not show. It'll still be the wire and you won't be able to see it in the render. Okay, now we need to set this right over here. We need to place the anchor point of our triangle here on the line, so as we design, we can keep it within this box and it'll loop seamlessly. So let's click our triangle, hold down Control, and then bring it all the way, and you can kind of see the line right there. So right there, you're going to keep it just where it's at. Now let's get to modeling this triangle. So first thing we need to do is add a solidify. Go over here in your modifiers, add the solidify, and we're going to bring it out like that and click apply. And so now we have this triangle. First thing we need to do, go to your edge select right up here and hold down shift and click these 3 edges right down here. And then right over here, if you don't see the panel, you'll see this little arrow right here. Just drag it out, and we're going to go to the bevel. Click bevel, and just bevel it in right about there. Now we're going to select these 2. First, we need to go to the edge select right up here. Hold down shift and select these 2. Right click and subdivide once. It's going to subdivide this one up here. That's not a problem. We're not going to be messing with that. I don't know why it does that, but it's not an issue for the design we're making here. Now we need to select all 8 of these faces. So hold down shift, select them, and then we're going to go right here to inset faces. Up here, click individual. Now let's just inset them a little bit, just like that, and then hit S and just scale them forward right about there. Now, last thing we need to do to these, we're going to inset them again. Let's inset them one more time, just a little bit to right about, let's say right about there. And then we need to go to extrude region and scale it in like that. So now we've extruded in all this. And so if we want to go over to our matte cap real quick and sort of see how it's going to look, we have these vertices in here that we're going to apply our lights to. Okay, now let's add our floor. So we're going to select the floor vertice, and we're going to right click and subdivide. And we're going to subdivide it quite a bit, so I'd say right about there probably works. Subdivision of 7. And then we're going to inset them. Right here in inset faces, make sure individuals is selected. And then let's bring it in right about there. And then click extrude region and just bring them down like that. So now we have our floor and we have our side panels. All right, last thing we need to do, click these side panels here. We are going to inset those, make sure individual is selected, of course. Bring it in, and then select extrude region. Well, first we're going to inset it one more time to make it so when we go to extrude region, hit scale, it goes right in just like that. And then make sure you remain in these 2 selected. Make sure they're selected. Go to your materials, click new. This first material, we're going to make it metallic. And then the second material, we're going to make it red as an emission shader. Give it a strength of 50 and a red emission shader. Now go back to edit mode. So now that these are selected, we're going to click assign. And so if we go to the look dev mode, you can see that those lights are working. Now we need to add some blue lights to the inside of these panels, or sort of window looking things. So let's add one more material here, and we're going to make it an emission shader. give it strength of 50, and I'm going to give it a blue color. Okay, so now it's a little bit of work. We need to go into each of these windows and select these interfaces. So go in, I'm gonna go out of look dev for a minute, and then just go in and select all these interfaces. You can hold shift, and then as you're working, you can select the blue material and click assign, and then you can see that they've been assigned to that spot. So go in and do all of that, and come back when you finish doing that. Okay, so now all of them have been assigned, and let's move on with the tutorial. So the next thing we need to add is an array modifier. So click on your cylinder right here. I'm going to rename it triangle, just to alleviate that confusion. Now go to your modifiers and add array. So generally you would use this relative offset section and just change it like this, because that would make perfect sense because they're going in a straight line. But the problem with that is when we go for the animation, it's not going to work the way we want it to. So here's what we have to do. First thing you want to do, click on your triangle, hit Control A, and apply location, rotation, and scale. Now we need to add an empty. So we're going to use this empty in the array modifier as the array object. So click plane axis, hold down Control, and just bring it back till it sits on our plane here. So it's sitting on the plane now, right where we want it. Now click on your triangle, deselect relative offset, and click object offset, and click your empty. So now it's way out here. We need to change that, click your empty, and just bring it this way, just like that. So if we go to 0, hold down Control, and move it out just like that. I'm going to leave it right about there. It's going to be perfect for our loop. So now for the animation, it's going to work just fine because it's going to do that thing, and you would not be able to do that in the relative offset in your array modifier. Okay, so now that we have this, we're going to click our triangle and our plane. Hold down Shift to select those, so Shift, plane, click M, and we're going to make a new collection and just call it whatever you want. All right, we named it whatever. Now, if you hit Shift A right down here for collection instance, click whatever, hold down Control, and then just bring it up till our plane right here, the edge of the plane is connecting to the edge of the other plane. It's important to do that so that everything stays perfect with a loop. And so if you click our empty here and we just rotate it, you can see where the instance starts and stops. That's not a problem for the design, but sometimes it doesn't look that good. In this case, I think it looks pretty good. Okay, so now we have our object here. We're going to make it a lot longer once we finish, but let's keep it here so we don't mess with the viewport. Let's add our camera. Camera, hold down Control, bring it all the way back so it sits on our plane. And then for rotation, just center everything in the rotation tab. So now it's looking forward, and we can sort of preview how it's going to look. Looks pretty cool. Now we're going to animate that. I'm going to hide this current instance so that we can animate it correctly. So for your settings, I'm going to put it at 24 frames a second, so it's there by default. And then right here on end, I'm going to give it 120 frames, so this is a 5-second animation. Now, in your user preferences, make sure in your animation that your keyframe interpolation is on linear, otherwise it's going to speed up and slow down at the beginning and end of your animation, and you don't want that. So click on your camera, go to your transform, and click on the keyframe for Y. Click this arrow right down here, and then click the right arrow to go to 1 extra frame, and then type in 8 and click your keyframe. So now it'll loop just perfectly, going straight through your animation. I'm gonna put our instance back on, and let's just preview how that's gonna look. It won't loop perfectly here because it's not long enough, but this is just to make sure that everything is working correctly. Yes, and the Eevee kind of blinks, but if you look on just the viewport, it loops just fine. Okay, I like to make my camera a little bit wider, so click on your camera, go to your camera settings, and right here on focal length, this is basically like changing a lens on your camera, so it makes it super wide angle or super narrow. So I usually put it at about 25, and also makes your animation look like it's going faster the wider your lens is. So that's a little trick for you to keep in mind. All right, now we're gonna do the animation. So the way I got that bouncy animation, let's see if we can find it. So I got this really bouncy animation, and it's very, very simple to do that. Blender provides these presets. So go to Edit, Preferences, right here on Animation, click your animation to bounce right here on Dynamic Effects. And that's not gonna change the animation we've already done. That's already set. So click on Bounce, and then click Away, and let's animate that. So click on your empty, and that's what's gonna be able to animate that for us. So click on the empty, go to rotation on the transform settings. I think it's Y. Yeah. So start where you want it to start. I think right about there looks good. So that's -6. Now click the keyframe for -6. Go all the way to the end. Click keyframe again, and then go, for me it's 60, right here to the middle, and just click 6, and then click keyframe. And now it should animate just how we want. Yep. Perfect. So that's the animation. We can kind of check it in Eevee, see how it looks. I would adjust the bloom settings and the material settings. I like a little bit more reflective. So I usually bring down the intensity. So I'm going to bring down the intensity of the bloom. You're going to do that right here. See the little camera icon, and then click bloom, and just bring down the intensity just a bit. Makes it look better. And in your world settings, make it black. There you go. And now we have a pretty cool animation. This is just the real-time view. It's going to look much better in the render. Okay, so now we're pretty much done. Let's go and instance this a bunch more. So let's click this instance that we have here, Shift D, hold down Control, and just do it a bunch until you no longer see a seam, or I mean, you know, until you no longer see the end when you animate it. All right, and I think we're done. I believe I instanced it enough. You can't really see it extending. When you're watching it in real time, it's going to blink at the beginning and the end of the animation. That's not going to happen when it renders. All right, so that's the design. I hope you liked it. I hope you use it. Again, if you make it, send it to me on Instagram. I'd love to see your work. I'll add you to the highlight, and you can see a bunch of other people's work as well. Thanks for watching.